Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat. Explore together.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on April 22nd, 2020, over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat as we continue our discussion over the updates to what we know about Osiris. This particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the advanced session of the week's exploration. Congratulations to those who signed up for a deeper dive. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
And this is the dialogist. Is that how we said it back in the last episode?
But dialogist would be like
the plural
of you.
The dialogy.
No, it's like how does she act? She acts very dialogist.
She is very.
Yeah. She's the most dialogist host I've ever.
She is like totally dialogist, guys. The dialoguini. I will have the dialoguini, guys.
Oh, I love it.
Hey, it's me, the one who messes up words all the time. Green-eyed music lover.
The dialogist one. The dialogist with the mostest. And last but definitely not least, in the hot seat as guest co-host, we have our good friend Taylor B. Taylor, how are you doing?
I am the most dialogist right now, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm having a great time on the show. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, we spent probably as much time in the in-between just chatting between the three of us and just with chat about all sorts of different things. Like
the darker side of what it means to be a guardian.
I mean, Guardian Games bringing out the
hard questions.
The hard questions. All those punches, hard punches. But, you know, what I was saying, though, is that we generally, when we're recording, for those people who don't normally come to our chat, we do have like a little intermission before we start up the second recording. But normally that intermission is like maybe 5-10 minutes. I think we've been going for, 30-40 minutes at this point,
probably.
in between
It's
the
almost
episodes.
like we haven't had a chance to record one of these in a while.
Right, but there's also just the fun, loving, and craziness that it's very Justin-like craziness that Taylor B possesses, and it's fun to be able to just chat with them.
I really appreciate that, and Justin, I hope you'll be listening later. Like, I take that as the greatest of compliments. I'm glad I can bring a little just insanity.
Yeah.
To the conversation. And I think it helps that we're both from, like, south of the Mason-Dixon. We can help with a little bit of
Oh, my God.
Oh, dead Titans make wall grow. Stonk. Oh, man. Oh, no. Oh, no. Like, if anyone who was not in the live chat just heard me read that, you have no idea what that context is for. But let me tell you.
Oh, no.
It's good context.
Yeah, it's good context, and honestly, it's it's very dialogian.
It's very dialogian.
Well, I know we talked about doing kind of like just a dive into the clarifications of Osiris's timeline with this, Green, and I know with was it I always flip the birds. Is it, which is also
Pigeon
a really
and
fun
Phoenix.
thing, which is a really fun thing to say. Yeah, oh my.
Pigeon.
I always want to say the phoenix and the pigeon, but I think it's the pigeon and the phoenix.
Correct. It's the gray and then the gold, if you're going to go color-wise, if you need a mnemonic type thing to remember it.
That doesn't help.
That's actually a really good way to remember it.
That doesn't
Because I think it's important to like the story itself, too.
Little bit. It's a little bit thematic, as we're going to kind of get into. But yeah, the timeline is interesting with Osiris in general, just because we don't have a lot of it. We have a lot more hearsay about Osiris than we do information directly from him. So would you say that Pigeon and the Phoenix is more of an actual viewpoint, more of a first-person viewpoint of what his history is before everything, before Trials comes to be a thing and whatnot, and before he gets removed from the entire tower?
I would say that it's actually kind of like a good... yes. Yeah, I would say definitely before Trials. We actually get Trials. We get a lot of information from Trials and Tribulations. A lot gets clarified about the original Trials of Osiris in that particular book. And then, but everything else really, the Pigeon and the Phoenix really does clarify, especially the mindset that not just Osiris, but also Saint was in, which I think is super helpful, personally, because it really, to me at least, also really presented, what was going on and why what seemed like a very dramatic schism was maybe not as dramatic as everything was making it sound. Like the whole thing, there's also I keep going back to it, but there's also one of the entries from Trials and Tribulations where Osiris actually weighs in on the whole exiling of him from the city when he calls back, or when he basically curbs the disciples of Osiris's enthusiasm for making them pay for slandering against him. And Osiris is like, no, there was no acrimony between us. Like, we are on the same side. Which I really appreciated, because up until that point, it had always been like Osiris always has that grumpy old guy facade, and so it's easy to assume that he did not get along with the Vanguard and thus held a grudge against them. And it turns out that's actually not at all what was going on.
Right.
I like that clarification.
There's also something to be said about how Osiris did not approve of what his cult was doing. He had no organization,
he
nothing,
actively,
no role.
He actively tried to disband them.
I will. All right. So I do say he actively, or at least what's the word? Demonstrably spoke out against them. I don't know how active he was in that, because he's just so.
Well, yeah, that's true.
By his other stuff, I wonder how much he actually did aside from little comments to his friends.
I don't think he would necessarily explain to the public, the general public, that denounce them or anything publicly. I don't think he has the time in his mind to be able to do that, and he doesn't care enough to do that.
I think it's more the latter, especially. I don't think he doesn't care.
Well, there's also the aspect that with Osiris in general, he speaks out pretty clearly to Brother Vance, which we'll get into when Trials and Tribulation. And he speaks out to Sister Feora in some ways as well, with some of the different things that the cult is doing in some of the introduction cards for that book in particular, that Osiris was not a huge fan of the cult.
He's not a fan of zealots.
No.
He because his whole thing is knowing, his whole thing is knowledge, right? It's understanding what is going on. And zealot, if you're overzealous about something, you often will agree to do something. That's the whole definition of zealot, is you're just and all that. But that being said, he doesn't necessarily turn them down for research purposes. No, he does not. He recognizes a tool when he sees one, I think would be the easiest way to say that.
Yes.
So question for both of you, but Blue especially, would you say he's sort of like a Socrates kind of figure? Or would you say that, like, in my personal view, I think he's become sort of like a probability in real life versus literary version of Diogenes in terms of like philosophers that he's being compared with. Like, he probably had some big ideas and a lot of like principal notoriety, but I'm wondering how much is like him actually interacting with stuff in real life.
Yeah, I mean, because I can totally see the Socrates piece, because a lot. I mean, what's up?
I don't think he's definitely not a teacher per se. Like, he does not take on students necessarily.
Ikora is a student.
Ikora, was she though?
The other thing is the way he arguably teaches. If you want to go down that way, is pretty similar, because Socrates was not gentle. He was not a gentle teacher by any stretch of the imagination. He did not pull punches, and he made it very, very obvious when he disagreed. He treated everyone on the same level. And so he expected them to rise to the level of, if they made a claim, then they're going to need to defend that. And I see that in Osiris, and I think that's where a lot of his, not animosity, but his like disdain towards the cult of his followers kind of comes from, is because a lot of them are just like, well, you said this, and he's like, no, that's not, you're not understanding what I'm talking about. Like, don't just quote people back to them.
I can dig that. It kind of reminds me of how can I say this? It reminds me of like that's sort of maybe even like a bit of a trope, but like Life of Brian. He keeps saying that he's not the Messiah and he's not doing all those things, and they all record back like, oh, so we should worship you now.
Oh God.
Yeah, like we should.
Yeah.
It's kind of like he thinks he's very purposefully and saying in the best way that he can that he's not these things that they're attributing to them. Because I think in the comic it very like clearly shows that he's not into anything any of his fans are saying about him.
Oh yeah. Like,
well, and I think that dives into, I think what Green had mentioned too is like, I just don't think Osiris existed so much in his head that he was like the proverbial philosopher, not philosopher king, but, in the perspective of the disciples, he really was. He didn't care about leading. And so he just like, he basically was like, look, you're not in my way, but you're not helping me. So I don't care. Like, as long as they didn't hinder him, I don't think he really, I get the feeling like he didn't really pay them any, like they weren't even a blip on his radar. Like, because the whole thing with Trials and Tribulations with Brother Vance, you see that with him when he calls Vance to task near the end of the book, and then Vance is like, oh yeah, by the way, Amara says this, and he's like, oh, good job. Like, he completely does a 180. But in Osiris, I took that as like, yeah, no, yeah, exactly. It was exactly like, it was like, oh, you were broken, and now all of a sudden this this screwdriver is, oh, it's working now. Like, it's Osiris doesn't register that,
he doesn't hold a grudge necessarily on any sort of these different things.
I don't even think he registers that there is a grudge to be held, because it doesn't have any weight in what he's actually trying to do. Like,
well, that and the fact that he does not care publicly how his name comes across, like, that is something he has never ever cared about. Like, even the whole thing, like being flattered, the idea of being flattered for having a following like that,
yeah, that's true.
It doesn't register with him.
He got annoyed because they kept getting in his way more than he was flattered that they were following him around and copying him. Which wasn't that the explanation of why he started wearing the Egyptian thing was as a disguise?
Yep.
I was about to say, I'm trying to remember
correctly.
it. If
I recall correctly.
he was trying to avoid him.
It was his sneaky bit, and then they figured out that was him, and they're like, "Oh, this is his new look. We need to mirror him." I like that they have their own little fashion league with their obsession with him. Like, they come in, they're just like, "Hey guys, did you know that he put a dog head on top of his head? What if we did that?"
He's the trendsetter. Oh Lord.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he's everything, and that's like I get why he's straight away. That's way too much pressure.
Yeah, not everybody could be RuPaul.
Oh goodness. Yeah, no one can be a topic dictator and fashion lord.
Right? It's just too hard. It's just too terribly difficult.
And be fabulous on top of it, like
yeah.
Goodness.
I mean, he does glitter, or does that glow? What is it?
Mean, all right, so Osiris plays with glittery cubes, which is a little different.
There's some place I can go, but this is a family show.
Ooh. Taylor's like, nope, I'm going.
I mean, I'll dive into it, but it's your pool.
Blue's just enjoying himself. He just needs a bucket of popcorn. Yeah.
Oh, I still want to know what the sequence that he arranges those three little cubes means.
I'm sure there's
for
different
the emote. Like we mimic it.
Right.
Well, and that's what it makes me think that they're like the meditation. What are the meditation balls? Like it's something to take his mind off of things.
But he uses it to open the gates.
He does he does use them to, but he uses it inside the Infinite Forest, which is.
So I feel like it's a thing where like I think it's more demonstrable in his cinematic of doing it. Like I think there's little symbols on each sides of those cubes, so maybe it's a little more like intricate, and he's arranging like three cubes in like a certain way in like a 3D fashion.
Mm-hmm.
That we like it doesn't translate to the emote that we were able to get.
Probably not.
I mean, I guess
and
my
we also
question
don't necessarily have the real things either.
Right, and I guess my thought process there was is it that, or is it a way for him to basically realize what he's thinking, like to organize his thoughts to exact that upon the reality? It's like a
magical tool to as
it's
a
like
focus.
a totem. Yeah, it's like a totem or a focus.
I if it is a tool, the tool is still what's doing it.
Sure.
Yes.
No,
and no.
like
yes
honestly,
and no.
like if you're putting torque on a screw with the screwdriver, it's the screwdriver that's putting the torque.
Right, but
your action, just as him like spinning the cubes, is his action doing the thing. But the tool is still what's doing it.
Taking about like
focus. Focus doesn't necessarily mean a physical tool. It's more of a mental trigger. It's a mental way to trigger a mental process to function the way that you want to. So people will often talk about focuses and stuff like that for meditation, a way to get them into the correct mindset for the meditation itself. I've also seen it used for more mystical side of things. They definitely consider it more of a way, like the idea of the wand. The wand itself doesn't actually do anything. It's the person, but the wand is the way that the person can direct their magic themselves. Like the magic doesn't come from the wand in Harry Potter; it comes from the wizards.
So right. thank you for saying that, because that's actually what I'm trying to get at. So I apologize for maybe like poorly representing what I was saying. Like that's what I'm getting at. Like it's still you, but the tool is what like helps you or like in maybe this case allows you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's what I'm getting at. Like you're still turning the screwdriver. Like it's your force that's doing it. Like the screwdriver isn't going to do it without you.
Right. Yeah. I was meaning like, so like in speaking like a fantasy D&D setting, when you have like clerics who use divine magic, they have what's called a focus, and it's literally a totem of whatever deity they happen to be in service of, but they channel their energy through that focus. And so when I see Osiris in the cubes, that's immediately what actually came to mind. But the thing is instead of a divine magic or a divine deity that he's calling magic through, it's literally the paracausal force of his light that he is manipulating through the use of those cubes as a divine focus. So he's manifesting his will that is powered by the paracausality that he can control, and it's focusing that will, because the thing is within the Pigeon and the Phoenix, we see that he has immensely powerful abilities with the whole reflections,
defending the city,
and his ability to literally see the big picture of what is going on. So the cubes, I kind of took the cubes are a way of him narrowing his mind to the event that he's actually trying to control, or to not control. Control is a bad word. What he's actually trying to accomplish. And so he has that immense power, but it's like, oh God, it's a very, very powerful. It's a very, very common trope in, like, I'm trying to think. Wizard of Earthsea is the one that keeps popping to mind, but like the main character is super powerful, but because it is he is so powerful, mundane things are actually nearly impossible for him to accomplish. Like, it's actually more difficult for him to do mundane spells because the wealth of power that he has. It's like hitting something with a sledgehammer where you only need like a tack hammer. Like, it's just he can't channel that much into that small of a device. And so if you kind of use it with that, that's what I see with Osiris and those cubes, is that it's his way of actually limiting the amount of power that he's bringing to bear on a problem, which allows then to focus on accomplishing what he needs to accomplish. Does that make sense?
No, that totally makes sense. I was kind of likening it in my head to sort of a jokingly. I was likening it kind of in my head, like where he's like seeing the outcome. He's like, nope, twist, nope, twist this around. Oh no, don't like that. Okay, this will work. Let's do it. Like, and he's like adjusting, because when he's doing that, he only does that when he's in the Infinite Forest. So I feel like that's him like manipulating it. He's like, nope, don't want Vex. Nope, Cabal, I need Fallen for this one.
Right.
And
like
let's give us an arc burn. All right, let's do this. Let's go in.
It's like
a fun run.
Our little Nightfall type thing. Whatever that card or whatever.
That we used
Five
to
of
have.
Swords.
I don't think we have it anymore.
Yeah, we do, because I had to get a new one. Orchid yelled at me about it.
You can still... I thought you couldn't pick the perks anymore on the Nightfall.
You can on the basic, not the ordeals.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I had the one that apparently you couldn't take the what is it?
The Vigil Cubes.
The
Mr. Dino Games, sorry.
Expulsion or whatever, the one that if you die you go to orbit. The original
card.
Extinguish. Yeah, apparently you couldn't used to take that off, and I had never gotten the new card that you could take it off. So I got a fun talking to about that, because I kept being like, they're like, take it off. I'm like, I can't take it off. Like that's so weird. Just anyways, this is gonna get awkward fast.
Did you guys ever? I think it was maybe a little more accessible in D1. Did you guys ever solo some Nightfalls just to see if you could?
I have tried. I have not accomplished.
I found it a lot easier in D1 to solo Nightfalls.
Yes, it was.
Not gonna lie, that was a very, very common thing in D1 for me.
The Nexus Mine comes to mind. No pun intended. But I used to be able, because even after they added, so for anyone who doesn't know, anyone who's a newer player, at the end of the strike, that would be the Nightfall, you could hang up at the top of this long drop down to go fight this Vexy boy, and just never even, like, you could have the high ground, a la Obi-Wan, the whole fight, if you just didn't rush into things.
You had to sit back there with, what was the sniper that would regenerate ammo?
No, that was but they didn't have that originally. That wasn't until
you couldn't do that. You could, it was a while. They still had the ammo regeneration if you ran out based on things that you killed. So what you would want is a scout rifle and maybe a sniper.
Icebreaker.
And you would want Icebreaker. That's what she was talking about. But before Icebreaker came out, you might want like a rocket launcher.
Right.
To hit the mind, and you would just basically just rain hellfire down on this
this poor Nexus
mine, yeah, and it can't even shoot at you because its like neck doesn't look up that high.
Oh, he's got a little collar on.
Yeah, and you would just kill it, and then eventually they changed it to where this this Minotaur would show up behind you, and he's just like running at you real fierce with a boomer gun. But even then, you could just turn around and kill him real quick. You could just save your rockets for just him and just kill him real quick, and then go right back to plucking down on this poor Nexus mine.
Gosh.
God.
And that was.
I remember the first week they put that Minotaur up there. Scared the Jesus out of everyone.
So for that strike, I would wear the knucklehead radar so that I knew when it was about to come and get me. I would just be plucking away, and then when I saw it, I would turn around and just be ready to murder it real quick with my heavy. I didn't even use heavy on the boss after they implemented that.
I save it for you.
The other one that was always fun to solo was the one that everyone still, for some odd reason, loves to quote, but the Valis to Arc one. You get underneath the stairs off to the left.
Oh, you get underneath the stairs and you shoot between the objects. You shoot between the I'm sorry. You shoot between the friggin'
boxes.
The boxes and whatever stuff.
Then you'd always have the random Centurion.
I don't know what that room is. I don't know if it's like a depot. Why are there boxes there? I don't know anything about it.
I just loved it because you'd always have the random Centurions who would come crowding up against you. You're like, get out of the way!
Oh, dude. Oh, and they would knock you out of the little slat between the boxes. Go find your own slat. Get out of here.
Go find your own hiding place.
This is mine. I'm here right now.
My God. That
I was here first.
We always would stack on top of each other.
Oh, it's like sardines.
Awful. It was. Oh, God.
No, sardines have much more organization.
This is fair.
Than what was going on in D1, because people would be so it's sardines are at least already dead. So they can't impact one another, and whereas what would happen in D1 is you'd be trying to launch a Gallarhorn at this boss, and then somebody's gonna jockey you out of the way,
right into the wall.
Yeah, and then your Wolfpack rounds do nothing, spin around in impotence.
Well, there's the other one who was the Night Stalker who couldn't actually hit the boss.
Oh, that was always fun.
Oh, God.
Ended up hitting the top of the ceiling, and then just for the next 20 seconds, you have just this random pulsing,
blinding purple light.
And you know what I always loved about that is this person would be shooting the boss in between the gap, and then when they pull back for their Night Stalker round, it's like they'd never been third person before.
Right?
You're I'm gonna point up, I'm gonna do something completely different. Let me jerk back on the stick.
Oh, God. I feel like the new animation for Night Stalker literally is a punishment for all of that, just to be as soon as you get tethered, your cursor goes down real hard, right? I don't feel like it was that bad back in D1, but
it's much more
D2,
severe.
Holy.
When you get tethered, or when you tether, when you shoot the.
When you get tethered, I think it's a complete
I always get the feeling it's completely random, to be honest, because sometimes it'll jerk up, and then other times it'll jerk. I just
nice kill, boo.
Yeah, I just am ugh. But yes, Osiris.
Yeah. So Osiris, we talked a little bit about Osiris and kind of his powers. I know we're going to get into it more when we do Trials and Tribulation, but do we want to talk a little bit more about what we knew back in D1? Because the only thing I remember that we were all concerned about in D1 was the projections that are brought up when he does his meeting with Mara before taking King.
Yeah. So I want to ask about this.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I had a real question about this, when I was looking at the show notes, and I think it got taken away with my magnification of the mind map because I have squinty eyes. But basically, what my question was: do you think that his reflections are something that he had prior to Twilight Gap? Because I don't think there's any record of him going in the Vex network.
Right.
He did have them prior to Twilight Gap because he had them at the Battle of Six Fronts.
Well, this is what I'm saying though. Like, if it's something he got from the Vex network, did he actually have them from his linear timeline before that battle, or is it something he sent back afterward?
AKA, is this something that is part of Osiris
Timeline.
and not part of the Vex
Yeah.
that he just utilized? I mean,
because like you can definitely like, and I've gone over this in a number of different things. It split it however you want, however you think it works. Vex time travel works backwards, 100%. If you think it works forwards, there's a debate for that. But like backwards, there's no argument. It 100% works backwards.
Well, and we've demonstrated that.
Yeah, and if he stole Vex technology to create those reflections, like based on when they write about him going into the Vex network, for him to have those at that battles, I feel like he had to send them back. And that's a little spin-foily, but like that's how that reads to me.
It's possible. We do know he did have some interaction with Vex because he was already interested in the Vex prior to he's interested in the darkness, rather, I guess, in Pigeon and Phoenix. He doesn't necessarily call out the Vex specifically, but he's doing research out in the forest and whatnot and searching. Him and Segura are both searching for answers, but it doesn't lead him to the Vex. I don't know when his fascination with the Vex happened before. I imagine prior to him ever going to the city, but we don't have any confirmation.
So we know that he spent time with Fellwinter and Nerwin. Like he was and that's something that Brother Vance made a comment about when he talks about when he became the Vanguard Commander and Vanguard Mentor and Vanguard Commander. He was known already because of his association with Fellwinter and Nerwin with the Iron Lords. And so and that also ties into the Pigeon and the Phoenix, because you see in the Pigeon and the Phoenix him taking out one of the warlords, and albeit not for an altruistic purpose. Like he does it because the guy won't leave him alone, but he still takes out a warlord, and then he basically RTLs him. And so and then oh god, that scene is so great, because then he's like Segura's like, you're gonna let him go, like the ghost, and he's like, I'm gonna what now? Like,
am I?
am I? But like, I think that also was I want to say, oh gosh, this is such dangerous territory for me.
Right, I know.
The association with the Iron Lords would have opened his eyes, because we know that the Iron Lords were obsessed with Golden Age technology and with Clovis Bray and with war mines for their own reasons. And so that, and we know Clovis Bray was associated with the Vex and the Hive. Like, we know that for a fact from Revelation and for a few other things. And so, like,
subtle.
Well, like Aspect and Revelation especially, we see Clovis Bray's recognition of the Hive as the second alien race that they've come across. And then within D1, Clovis Bray knew about the Vex because they provided Rasputin to help the Ishtar Academy.
Right.
And so they have, and then in Revelation, it's called out that Clovis Bray uses that knowledge as a way to position themselves as the leading expert of alien interaction. And so, like, there's a bit of stair-stepping connections to make there. But if he is with if he's with Fellwinter and Nerwin, who are probably up there in the Iron Lords as far as connections to looking into Golden Age technology, it would serve to reason that he probably is, at least in some capacity, familiar with the Vex. But I like the idea of explaining his reflections as a Vex tech from the future, because even if we don't see it now, that's always actually a possibility. Yeah, I mean, right? Because, like, as long as Osiris is still around, it could always be, oh, this is the moment that he finds
it's
the
very Bill and Ted.
It's yeah. That's actually exactly what I was thinking when you were saying that. It was like, oh my god, this is
It's very Bill and Ted.
This is very
like,
Bill and Ted.
Bill, like we got to remember to go leave this stuff in this trash can in the future.
Yeah. So I actually I never thought about it like that, but like I do know, because like we do see him make use of them with Six Fronts, which would be, as far as we know, well before. Well, we know that would be before he becomes ingrained in the Infinite Forest, because
also
go for it.
Also, just as the city is like completely becoming a thing, right?
Right.
Like, Battle of Six Fronts.
Which would point to the fact that they probably didn't have the tech to go jumping around planets, at least not easily accessible, because jump ships were very rare. And that, I mean, jump ships are still rare even in the City Age. That's one of the things that it gets called out within Vanilla D1 when you find your jump ship. That's the whole point of taking the jump ship to the city, is to get it equipped with a drive to allow you to go to the moon and then, to then later explore the system.
Right, but I thought that was more you just didn't have the goods yet on that one, and
right. No. But I mean, but what I'm saying is, like, you had to take that ship to the city, because the city is where that technology was most common. So if Osiris, what I'm saying is basically using that as a backtrace on logic for the timeline, Osiris wouldn't necessarily have a jump ship available to him to go to Mercury and get ingrained with the Infinite Forest prior to the City Age, if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. It's like the stuff they can salvage versus the means of the technology based on other accounts at that time of the lore don't make that possible. However, if you bring like time travel and echoes involved in Vex technology, it becomes a little more plausible, especially if you have like a linear timeline that you're affecting, as opposed to like splitting timelines because of what you affect.
Yeah, and they're talking about this in chat too, really quick, but like, it is called out that the reflections and echoes are two sides of the same coin.
Oh yeah, no, because I think echoes are.
He says echoes are better. Are echoes
done by orcs, right?
Yes. Well,
demonstrably, it's not like we've only seen echoes of orcs in game.
Yeah, we've seen echoes of orcs, and I think we've seen echoes of Savathun. I want to
not in her image.
Not in her Oh no, maybe not in her image necessarily.
She's had agents. She's had tons of different agents.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I thought there was an echo of Savathun. I can't remember, but Dino's putting the quote in that from the, I think it's the maintenance record thing, where Osiris actually acknowledges that he did use echoes. He has used echoes before, which that brings up really interesting questions too.
Yeah, like it brings it up, but like reading the quote that Dino's posted in there, it's and we've never seen an echo of Savathun. That's a good point. It kind of makes me feel like the distinction is maybe like what's powering the manifestation as opposed to like the end result.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because when we did Taken King and when we fought the echoes of Oryx, we did that twice, and we've since fought an echo of Oryx here in D2 in the Reckoning.
Mm-hmm. But that's still more of a figment of Drifter's imagination gone wild. But yeah.
Well. I mean, yes, and I feel like he's probably drawing on that reality of the echo in that case, because he's tailoring that to the Guardian, who all players are.
Reckoning.
Well, but Reckoning's just a shadow. Like it's not it's not an echo.
It's not an actual echo, but it's the idea of American Gods. Like it's pulling the thought image of.
Sorry,
And I'm sorry, it's effectively what the echo of Oryx was in D1.
It's the end result is similar, but the process of creation is different.
I feel like if this was in the same game, they'd have a hard time naming it differently than the Echo of Oryx.
With that. Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah,
is all I'm going for there. But that's a good distinction. Thank you for saying that. But like all I'm going for is like I feel like it's a similar end result with different things powering it. It's like how can I say this? It's like if you're able to achieve the same things through different methodologies,
It's traditional cartoon drawing versus Pixar animations, possibly. You're still getting an animated
very
image,
similarly,
but
you could get a 3D depth result in your
Right.
animation through rotoscopy, which is a very old thing, or you could do it through 3D rendering. That's a very good analogy. Thank you.
yay! I can do those. So yeah, Osiris uses is it called echoes, or what is it called in the Pigeon and Phoenix when he's in the Battle of Six Fronts?
Those are reflections.
Those are reflections.
Reflections?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But the reflection, something different that we hadn't seen before in Curse of Osiris. These reflections actually have power. It's not just an image per se, because there's
it's true multiple man.
Yeah, he defends an entire sector
He
by
defends
himself.
I mean, I would. Yeah. I mean, he'd honestly pretty much defended the entire city to a degree.
Don't we also see 50 at once though, whereas this was maybe 12?
Yeah, in the Infinite
In that
Forest,
story,
he replicates because he sends. I think he even made hundreds, because that was one of the comments that he went when he sent after Saint 14.
So if in the same strain of Multiple Man, the Multiple Man theory, and I love that that's stuck.
Oh yeah. Well, and it stuck even more because he actually he calls out that one of the reflections went rogue and committed suicide. I was like, okay, whoa, this is 100% Multiple Man. This is it's
Also, can I just say one weird thing just to kind of throw this down the rabbit hole a different direction? With Osiris using the reflections in the Infinite Forest, we've seen something similar be done when you have copies of a certain Ishtar collective team within the Vex network itself. So it's not unheard of to have multiple copies.
Okay. Right, which is another nod to Taylor's comment about Vex Tech being the source of that.
I just want to add this. I want to add this to this. This was actually from our topic that me and the Bagels recorded earlier tonight. That sequence of simulations was entirely within the Goblin that they dissected.
Mm-hmm.
They had not entered the greater Vex network.
That was the entire purpose of them going up to the Spire with the extra copies, was they were stepping into the network at that point.
Exactly. And then eventually we know that that's how they encounter Praedyth and help him get those messages out, like his ghosts back in D1 and all that stuff. But where I'm going with this is every Vex, and this isn't entirely important to the Osiris conversation, but literally every Vex you encounter has at least that many simulations of you running, as best that they can simulate you.
Yeah.
Because they pulled that from a single goblin. Yeah. That's crazy.
Gosh.
I don't mean to explode anyone's heads.
No, you're good. I'm also holding myself back because it's going to be another spin foil that I used to push really, really heavily back after Curse of Osiris.
That was an excellent spin foil, by the way.
I was gonna say, can you please share it with us and the rest of the class?
Have you not shared this with Taylor?
I don't know if Taylor's heard this one or not. I know I haven't brought it up directly with him, but
I like this one.
This theory, this is a really, really freaking old theory where I was mostly being cheeky and trying to break Beard back in the day, which was something I did. It was a goal of every episode, really. It really was. But
as a longtime listener, you were very good at it.
Yes, I was.
But she's not wrong.
But she's not wrong.
So this theory was the whole idea that Osiris is possibly a reincarnated version of Dr. Shin.
Yeah. Love it. The crotchety old guy.
Ooh. Well, all right. So I've always had a special weird theory in my heart, because when I first heard it, and I don't think this is the case now, so hear me out here, but when I first played that mission in D1, I was back on the train that your ghost was also someone reincarnated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought our ghost, Peter Dinklage, was Dr. Shim. And that's why his passcode worked.
That would be kind of cool, too.
I would have really dug that. Things have changed since then, and I'm not hating on anything, but that was back then when we didn't know a lot. Anyone like really judging me for thinking that right now?
Yeah, don't feel judged. You don't need to feel judged. There are plenty of weird theories that I've held, that Blue's held, that it's just, it's just a theory. That's the fun thing. Theories are great.
Well, chat's cool. I'm talking to all those future listeners that are gonna come back in years later and be like,
years later,
yeah, Taylor B.
You're gonna get that one random message like 3 years from now,
and it will affect me.
You're like, no.
Sad. How could I be wrong years ago? F you.
I thought I was right all these years.
Yeah. I was really riding on that correctness.
If you don't, there's like a what is it? An expiration date on rightness with this theory type thing. I don't know. Yeah, no. Dr. Shim possibly being Osiris now it's a nice little thing that fits in a lot of ways, but it's also something that I know drives a few lore people absolutely batty.
Honestly, like, all right, I'll put it this way as someone who dabbles in a lot of like weird lore stuff. I'll say if something drives you batty, you're way too invested.
Mm-hmm.
Because the writers are betting on people like you.
Well said.
That's 100%. Like, I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, get used to disappointment.
Wait, you mean like reading fiction?
Yeah. If you're that invested based on your initial thing in like a grand sweeping like arc of something, just get used to disappointment because you're not open to change. You're not open to being surprised.
That's the fun of Spinfoil.
Dude, that's the best part of Spinfoil is that I would love for everything I said to be wrong, but I wanted to be proven wrong because all the things I pointed out, like, how can I say this? They were connected differently than I said, not that the things I pointed out were wrong.
Right.
Like that excites me in every episode that I record. That's my favorite part. I'm very boosted about being shown wrong later, and that's why I kind of made a point to saying that like we make retractions.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
that's the fun thing about research, right? Like that's what you want. You want your research to not necessarily be disproven. You don't want like an experiment disproven. You want it to be reinforced in a different way that you didn't think was coming.
Well, but
I think to add to that, like you want it to be explored,
right?
Like you want your idea to be explored. So like even if the idea isn't right, and I think you guys will mirror me on this, it's the idea that we all thought about it and had a good time. That's the real Spinfoil, is the friends we made along the way.
Oh, I feel like I need a little violin music now.
Okay, calm down, Deej.
Or like maybe saxophone music.
No.
Little Kenny G.
Oh man. Oh man, you got an alt sax? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, I do.
I'm sorry. I digress. Osiris.
Yes. So Osiris, he does the whole Battle of Six Fronts defense of the city. Then something we learn about him in Trials and Tribulations is he not necessarily becomes super close to the Speaker, but the Speaker and him definitely have more than just like a passing conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think again, it's because kind of tag into what Taylor was just talking about is Osiris isn't so. I kind of take Osiris's character as something that is not fixated on being quote unquote right, but as coming to understand what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like kind of going off of what Taylor was just talking about. It's the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of the actual truth, not I'm going to prove myself right.
Right.
He wants to understand what is happening, not just, it's my way or the highway. And I think that's where you see a lot of, like, with his character, that's where you see a lot of the disdain that he has towards the Speaker, towards the cult, all these different characters, they all have a common theme in which Osiris seems to bristle at, and that is, no, this is the truth. You can't make that statement and then be in the same breath being like, but I'm also trying to understand it. No, you closed yourself off to the fact that there is possibilities that are outside of your knowledge by stating point blank that this is the way it has to be.
Right.
I think that is the best way of saying what I kind of that's why I really appreciate the character of Osiris, is because that's a characteristic that I think is worth emulating and putting on a pedestal, is that pursuit of not being right, but that pursuit of understanding what is going on with the world. So
here's my question with that, with the way Osiris perceives things and how he handles the speaker. Back in D1, we had this very, very, very strong emotional connection between the two, where it was believed that Osiris really, really hated the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any more clarification? Which, I mean, we do, but what is the clarification that we have now as getting more of a first-person dialogue rather than these hearsays?
That would be in Margins, actually, which is from Pigeon and Phoenix. It's so Osiris, he had a bad taste in his mouth when it came to the speaker before he actually even met the speaker, and I think again it goes back to what we've all been, or all three of us have been kind of talking about, is this idea that Osiris he's not really keen on the people who are demagoguing their way into power. He doesn't care for it that much, but because when he first meets Saint is the one that recommends that he go talk to the speaker, and Osiris kind of poo-poos that idea because he's like, you get the feeling that he's like, oh, I already know his type, basically. But when you see Osiris actually interact with the speaker in Margins, he is very, I would say he's very respectful. He's very open to having a conversation with the speaker, and he actually wants to hear the speaker's perspective about the traveler. Like he wants to know why the speaker is so certain, about something. It seems like
I feel like the speaker is, to your point, at all times in how his character is depicted, when his character is depicted directly, that is to say, not like how Brother Vance may have depicted him in D1.
Mm-hmm.
Or what have you, sort of adjacently.
Mm-hmm.
At all times, he is a student of knowledge, and I think if anyone has anything that is new to present to him, I think he's always been open to. I don't think there's any example of him fighting something that's even contrary to what he presents.
Who, Osiris or the speaker?
Osiris, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to a degree you could almost say that to both of them, right? I think.
I think the speaker. I think the speaker is very suppressive.
Well, and so see, and I think publicly he is, but I think privately he doesn't seem necessarily to be that way, because because I mean, again, this goes back to my entire point of view of the speaker is trying. I don't agree with what he's doing. I never agree that censorship is ever acceptable, but I understand the logic to the choice that that led him to make those choices. I disagree with them 100%, but I see that he's in the control of a dystopian world. He's trying to keep these people from falling apart, and in the same vein of the symmetry, right? The symmetry is out there preaching, oh, well, we'll never win because in order to win, we have to lose. And the speaker's like, I can just see this face palming of no, that's not what you tell a military who's in the loot. You don't tell your army, hey, there's no way to win, but you should go fight anyways. That's not what you tell them. It's because that's the whole symmetry is hey, in order to defeat the darkness, we have to give up the light. So are you going to actually do that? No, because that's the whole point, is it's two sides of the same coin. But I think with the speaker, especially within margins, and, we also have the speaker, you actually see the speaker talk to Saint within, I think it's Shepherd. You see the speaker and Osiris disagree multiple times within Pigeon and the Phoenix, and it's never
animosity.
Heated. It's never heated.
In the comic.
Yeah.
In the comic, but here's my point. In the comic, we see a public conversation between them. In Pigeon and the Phoenix, it is a private conversation between, and the consensus members were there, but it was not a public discourse. It was a private closed-door meeting.
But aren't there meetings that are in the comic? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah,
I agree
in the
with
web
your
comic,
point 100%.
In the web comic,
in the comic, there.
There was. I think there was
there's stuff that they have discourse about that's not in the greater consensus of the thing.
Correct. There is a mention in the comic that I think is akin to the entry of politics in Pigeon and the Phoenix, because it's where Osiris basically tries to hand everything over to Ikora, and the speaker kind of calls him to task. But I like the way that politics presented it, because you actually got kind of more of the inner dialogue than you did in the comic. In the comic, it's really hard, because the comic is a different perspective of the same event. So neither of them are 100% accurate, I would argue. They are two perspectives of the same event. But I think that the way that it is particularly portrayed in politics is you actually get a little bit more of the inner dialogue on both sides, whereas with the comic it was more of just the it's not the animation, but the physical conversation, the physical context.
So I hear you there. Like one thing that really disconnected me a little bit was the sort of relationship between Osiris and Brother Vance, between the comic and how it comes off in some of the later lore cards.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the comic, it's like Brother Vance is there from ground zero. Like, he is doctrining all these things that Osiris says publicly while he's in his position of in the Vanguard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a little like, hey, how do you
how do you reconcile the two different perspectives on it?
Well,
yeah, I mean,
but I mean, that's pretty accurate to what's in Trials and Tribulations.
Mm-hmm.
Trials and Tribulations show Brother Vance as it shows him arriving on Mercury. It doesn't detail what he was doing beforehand, but it does hint that he was known for his unique understanding of the text. That's one of the reasons that he was called out by Sister Feora and actually given control of the experiment. I don't want to dive too deep into that, but that is a large reason why he was able to do what he was allowed to do within the disciples, was because of his knowledge of the text, not necessarily of Osiris, but and it kind of the way I read it, and this is completely contextual, so I'm open to debating this, but the way I read it was he arrived at Mercury not in the first wave, but that didn't mean that he wasn't a member of the disciples early on. He it kind of felt like, I actually remember messaging Green being like, do we even know when Brother Vance went blind? Because there's some things in the Trials and Tribulations that it's this is really, I can read this either way. There's a couple passages that are really interesting because in that context especially. So
I'm really here for that. That's actually a very good point. And looking back on some of the chapters from that book, I'm looking back on chapter 3, the Cult of Personality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just reading this one line about how Osiris was on Mercury, and those disciples were coming to meet him.
Yep.
And I'm just thinking, there's this one line where these two warlocks come to greet him.
Yep.
And
the sisters.
One carried the scent of warmth.
Yep.
and the other,
the ozone.
Ozone and Tang. And I'm just wondering, like, does Tang exist in the
God.
Destiny universe?
This is where you're dovetailing. Okay.
I wondered.
I'm all for this serious conversation. Nope. Okay. I get. Continue.
I like that
You may
setup.
continue.
I approve.
I
of
approve.
This.
That is the reason I will allow this to continue, is because that setup was beautifully done.
Thank you so much.
You can retire now. You've gotten blue.
I knew my audience. I knew I had to cultivate it just right.
You did it. You did it.
Gosh, I'm like, all right, where are we going with this? Where are we going? Then you said Tang. I was like, God, it's too late. Can't abort the mission already.
We can't abort. We've gone too far.
We've gone too far.
So my friends listening and in the chat, this is all a very convoluted way to get to the point where
to work the Tang in.
That Tang exists. Tang the drink exists in the Destiny universe. And here's my proof. In chapter 3, The Cult of Personality, there's a line that reads, "One is carried by the scent of warmth, the other ozone and Tang." Now I only offer that Tang is used as a descriptor of flavors or scents.
The thing that drives me crazy about this is that now all I have is this image of this beach bum who drank way too much Tang on the, like, just a surfer dude who's in the cult. He, like, signed up and he was like, "This sounds cool. I could be tan all the time." The best part is this is
a warlock.
Yeah. This would be cool. I could totally get down on that book club here on Mercury. I could sunbathe and tan.
Yo, like, I brought the Tang with me.
I brought the Tang with me.
You guys want some space drinks? Like, what's good? Like, I brought...
He's like the bartender for the group.
Yeah.
Everything's mixed with Tang. Oh, God.
All I'm saying is, like, you show up and everyone is space traveling, and sometimes you need a citrus treat.
Is it citrus, though? Is it actually citrus?
Yeah, it's meant to be like orange.
Anything?
Yeah, it's meant to be like orange.
It's not just yellow number 23 and red number...
I mean, that's up to NASA, but all I'm saying is
That's up to NASA.
I didn't develop Tang. I'm not going to, like, represent their product.
God. I'm done.
Yep.
All right, so shout-outs.
Groovy. Who's shouting out first?
You go for it, Taylor.
Oh, I want to give a shout out to my co-host on the Spinful Theory podcast, the Bagels. I want to give a shout out to Blue, Green, Justin, the Greater Lore Network, everyone who's been a large part of any success we've ever had on our show. We've only gotten it through your support, so thank you so much. You guys are great.
Oh, Green.
Shout out to those of you who are willing to go into Crucible with us while we're doing this and just
listen.
Ends and Orchid and
it's not a Thorn quest, but it's
not.
It's up there on my platform. That's all I'm saying.
Anyway, Blue, do you have any shout outs?
No.
Nope. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusedFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.